warm welcome to this special broadcast coming to you from inside the Parliament lawns. It's a rare occasion when you see a TV program being conducted from inside the premises of Parliament. Remember, Narendra Modi government is celebrating 4 years of governance on 26 May 2018. How has been the journey of this government? It was supposed to be a people perceived this government as a pro-capitalist government. Many called it a sood boot ki sarkar. But at the end of 4 years, has this government been able to transform itself as a pro-poor government? Well, over the next 1 hour, I'm joined by veteran panelists. Let me introduce you to them one by one. Jayant Sinha joins us as Minister of State for Civil Aviation on the program. Next to him is Katya Tulsi, Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament and also a veteran lawyer. Aditi, Phadnis, she is the political editor, Business Standard, and also on my, just next to me is Pawan Verma, JDU leader and a former Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament. And I also give a broad welcome to all these people who found time and joined us here on an important program like this. Thank you so much for coming on the program. I would like to begin the program with the opening remarks from Jayant. If very briefly, if you could just tell us how the journey of this present government has been in the last 4 years.
Thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be with all of you this evening to start, I think, what are going to be a series of debates and discussions about what the Modi government has been able to accomplish in the last 4 years. Well, I will have to say, and I can say with a great deal of conviction and all the facts at my command, that it has been a historic 4 years. It has genuinely been a historic 4 years. When the Honorable Prime Minister, at that time the Prime Minister to be, came to the Central Hall of Parliament on May 20th, 2014, Neelu ji, he said कि ये सरकार जो बनने वाली है ये गरीबों की सरकार होगी और गरीबों को समर्पित सरकार होगी. And he did this on May 20th, much before any allegations or any statements about sood boot ki sarkar. So we have been very clear about our priorities from day one. And this is a government that believes that to be a garibon ka sarkar, a garibon ko samarpit sarkar, to be a pro-poor government, we also have to be a pro-markets government. It is a false trade-off to think that if you're pro-poor, you're not going to be a pro-markets government. And we've been both pro-poor and pro-markets, and the results are in front of you. If you look at it from the point of view of what we've done for the people of India, today you can go to any village and know that that village is going to have bijli, sadak, pani, swasth, shiksha, bank account, gas cylinder, toilets, all of these things we are delivering every day to the people of India. It has transformed the lives of people of India. As far as infrastructure is concerned, as far as the economy is concerned, we have transformed all of those, and I think it has made a tremendous demonstrable difference in the life of all Indians.
So we'll have to go by what Jayant is saying, that the governments need to balance out between the pro-market policies and the pro-poor policies. Well, we have another 1 hour completely to discuss all this. I'd like to take the initial comments from Mr. Katya Tulsi also. How do you rate the performance of the present government in the last 4 years?
Well, if we have to take a dispassionate view of the performance of 4 years of Modi government, I think they deserve credit for bringing about the insolvency code. That has made it easier to shut shop. They deserve a huge credit for also putting in place GST, which is the mother of all reforms. But I'm afraid that farmers are still distressed. They neither have access to easy credit, nor do they get quality inputs at reasonable prices. Therefore, farming is no longer remunerative. MSP has been a constant irritant, and in these 4 years, the BJP failed to fulfill the promise of giving 50% more than the cost of production. Manufacturing is stagnating at 16% of GDP. The jobs have grown by 2.1%, but the total employment has fallen by 0.1%, which is perhaps the biggest setback of demonetization. But I would say that the biggest crisis of these 4 years has been the banking crisis.
Okay.
V. Srinivasan says that this is the biggest crisis of our times. Corruption in banking has become monumental. So the slowdown as a result of demonetization has resulted in widespread sickness of industry. The deposit growth has fallen to 6.7%, which is the lowest since 1963. And therefore, I think that on a scale of 10, Modi government would get 3 or maybe 4.
Okay, so Mr. Katya Tulsi has given 3 or 4 on 10 on Modi government. Well, he's entitled to his own views. Mr. Pawan Verma, what are your views on the last 4 years, how the government has been performing? Apart from the factors which Mr. Katya Tulsi has just mentioned, and of course, the way Congress has been going hammer and tongs against the government. And also let me tell you that we had invited Mr. Manish Tiwari from Congress, and at the last moment, at the 11th hour, he backed off from the program. So it's just don't think that we did not invite Congress for being here on the program. So it was his choice not to be as part of the program. Yes, Pawan.
Well, you know, it's an important milestone to complete 4 years, and I have a confession to make. Part of those 4 years we were against the government, and for a short while after that we have been with the government.
Okay.
I think that entitles me and my party to make, as far as possible, an objective assessment of what has been achieved and what still remains to be achieved. One thing is very clear. On such occasions, the tendency is to paint the picture black or white. Everything is good or everything is bad. I think there is a middle ground where you can make an assessment which can stand up to the facts. So let me give you some examples.
Right.
I think this government was unique for having been a government of an absolute majority after a long time. So the expectations from this government, in terms of the promises made during the election and the fact that it got an absolute majority, were very high. If that is taken as the yardstick, I am afraid there are many areas where actual deliverables have fallen short of what the promises were or the expectations were and continue to be. For instance, I will mention to you, and they have been touched upon by both Jayant and Mr. Tulsi. I think that there is far greater agrarian distress today than people thought there would be after 4 years of this government. I think that on the front of jobs, the promise of 2 crore jobs has fallen far short of what the expectations were. I think on the ease of doing business, there has been some improvement, but not enough. On the other hand, the hunger index, our position has fallen, not risen. On the gender equality index, it has fallen, not risen. I would say to you, therefore, that if you are taking only economic parameters, I think the government has been a government of good intent. My party said demonetization, we lauded the intent behind it in order to remove black money. But we cannot doubt the fact that in its implementation, it was a monumental mismanagement failure which caused avoidable hardship. I congratulate the government for bringing in the GST, which they had earlier opposed when they were in the opposition. Governments are a continuum. This government brought in GST. But I do believe that when it was brought in, the preparations were less than adequate, again leading to a great deal of avoidable hardship, which affects the common man. So you have to draw a balance sheet. You have to draw a balance. I think that one of the great achievements of this government has been the Ujjwala scheme, which has actually made a dent in the quality of lives of people who are poor by providing them gas connection. But there are a string of failed promises. MSP is one. If you ask many servicemen, OROP is one. We need to take it up. We need to find out why between promise and delivery there is a gulf.
Right. But Pawan, as you just pointed out, and my next question would be to Aditi, of course, that as Pawan, Mr. Katya Tulsi also pointed out, that there are a lot of fronts on which the government has failed. But when you look at any government's performance, you judge the performance in the backdrop of the performance of the previous government. Now, if you look at the 10 years of UPA rule, of course, it was marred by corruption scandals, it was marred by policy paralysis, government lethargic bureaucracy. These were the hallmarks of the previous government. So, if you look at the backdrop of that, that kind of performance, so how would you say that how has the Modi government then performed in the last 4 years?
Well, I would say that in 5 years, what the Modi government has achieved is nothing short of fantastic. The amount of work that this government has done in 5 years is amazing, including, well,
4 years.
Okay, I'm giving you another year. It's nothing short of fantastic. What is worrying is that the sequence, when we do reform, you can't just pluck something out of the air and say, I've done this reform, now it's for people to take the ball and run. There are two things which are very important when you do reform. One is the sequence and the other is the design. And I feel that there are many mistakes that have been made by this government, beginning with one of its most important signature reforms that it decided to undertake but abandoned, which is the whole issue of land acquisition. We spent almost 18 months agonizing over what is the best way to acquire land, what is the best way to pay compensation, did a whole circle 360 degrees and came back to exactly the same point where we started. So, I think that was a major loss of a long period in which other things could have been done. It suggested that the government had not been thinking about this before it came into government. The other things that I think are very important are financial inclusion, the fact that your mate can now go to a bank with pride and say, this is my account and I'm going to deposit money. The whole issue of digitization and infrastructure creation. But I think the Indian manufacturer, the Indian industrialist is not as enthused by this government as they should be. I am not saying this, the Prime Minister himself has said this at a meeting of industrialists in the beginning of 2017, I think it was. In January, he met industrialists and told them that, look, I get a salary, but you don't earn money because you get a salary, you earn money for taking risks, so go out there and take risks.
Right.
But I think that has left the private sector somewhat unmoved.
Okay.
The downside of the government, I think, must be clearly and unambiguously stated. The Prime Minister has said, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. The rest of the government and the party does not think so at all. So, the residual feelings of antagonism to minorities, the residual feelings that the constitution must be changed to in favor of the majority, I think these are all reprehensible and they are destroying the fabric of India.
Okay, so before I go to Jayant and ask him where the government can now improve or what is the scope of improvement, I'd like to take in a few comments from the audience who are present here. I can see the people who are representing the women's organization. You have, what is your feeling about the present government, how it has performed, and regarding your sector, regarding the women's issues, do you think that the government has been fulfilling the aspirations?
Myself, Nikki Dabas. I'm President of Nutrition and Natural Health Science Association, and more than 5,000 ladies are with me. Actually, अगर हम ground level पे देखते हैं, तो हमें बहुत ज़्यादा real ground level पे जाने की ज़रूरत है. जब तक हम सच्चाई को नहीं समझते, सिर्फ एक सेंटर में बैठ के policies बना देना is not enough. अगर आप societies में जाते हो, तो हर जगह कुछ ना कुछ गलत हो रहा है ladies के साथ. तो उस चीज़ पे कोई real action नहीं लिया गया है. हम कंप्लेंट्स भी करते हैं तो उसका भी कोई ठोस रिजल्ट नहीं आता है. तो ये मैं कहूँगी कि यहाँ थोड़ा सा प्रैक्टिकल होने की ज़रूरत है.
ओके, सो यू फील दैट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में कहीं ना कहीं कोई कमी रह गई है
बहुत हद तक.
आपके टेबल के ठीक पीछे कुछ एक्स सर्विसमैन भी यहाँ पर बैठे हैं. आई लाइक टू टेक इन देयर ओपिनियन एज वेल. व्हाट इज़ योर फीलिंग अबाउट द गवर्नेंस सो फार इन द लास्ट 4 years? अ डिस्पैशनेट व्यू ऑफ व्हाट यू फील.
प्रधानमंत्री जी ने वादा किया था सैनिकों से कि अगर हमारी सरकार 2014 में आएगी तो 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन 100 दिन में दे देंगे. हम आज 3 साल से जंतर मंतर पर बैठे हुए हैं. और 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन प्रधानमंत्री जी बोलते कि दे दिया। मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ जयंत सिन्हा जी से कि अगर दे दिया तो सैनिक पागल तो नहीं है जो 3 साल से अपना घर परिवार छोड़ के भूखे प्यासे जंतर मंतर पे बैठे हैं। पिछले साल 2017 में हम आपके घर भी आए थे, आपको याद होगा। आज भी हम उसी जंतर मंतर पे बैठे हुए हैं इसी उम्मीद में कि प्रधानमंत्री जी एक दिन हमारा हक देंगे, उन विधवा बहनों का हक देंगे जिसके हस्बैंड ने इस देश के लिए जान दी है। फौजी कभी न जाति देखता न धर्म देखता, वो सिर्फ अपने देश के लिए मरता है और उसके जाने के बाद उसकी वाइफ को अपना हक मांगने के लिए सड़कों पे बैठना पड़े, ये देश का दुर्भाग्य है। मुझे किसी भी पार्टी से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, फौजियों के लिए सभी पार्टियां बराबर हैं। 2013 में जब कांग्रेस ने हमें हक नहीं दिया, हमने बीजेपी का साथ दिया और आज 4 साल हो गए प्रधानमंत्री जी इल्ज़ाम लगा रहे हैं कि गरीबों का पेट काट के 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन दे दिया। हमें 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन की जब तक परिभाषा लागू नहीं करेगी सरकार, हम जंतर मंतर से नहीं हटेंगे।
Okay, Jayant, you would like to assuage the fears of this lady?
देखिए, जो अभी जिन महिला ने इसके बारे में बात की उनसे मेरी बातचीत हुई थी 2017 में, जब 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन का एक प्रतिनिधि मंडल मेरे पास भी आया था और उसके तत्पश्चात सब जो बातें आई थी और सब जो उन लोगों ने अपनी मांगे रखी थी उन पे हम लोगों ने जितना कुछ हम लोग कर सकते थे, क्योंकि हम लोगों को सिर्फ कुछ लोग नहीं लेकिन हर सैनिक को, हर सेना के जो आज रिटायर्ड व्यक्ति हैं उन सब लोगों की बात समझकर जो देश के लिए उचित हो, अनुकूल हो, वो हमें अमल करना था। और जहाँ तक मुझे लगता है हम लोगों ने किया है। ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है और सरकार में ये असंभव है कि हर कोई को हम हर चीज़ दे सकें, ये नहीं हो सकता है। जहाँ तक किया जा सकता था और पूरे न्यायपूर्वक उसको किया जा सकता था वो हम लोगों ने किया। और आपको मालूम ही है कि ये जो मामला था 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन का, ये बहुत सालों से विलंबित था। बहुत सालों से सरकारों ने इसके बारे में कहा था कि वो करेंगे, लेकिन वो नहीं कर पाए। हम लोगों ने किया और ऐसा काम नहीं होता है सरकार का जो 100% सब लोगों को पसंद आए। कुछ ना कुछ कमियां, नुक्स होते हैं, उसके लिए हम क्षमा मांगते हैं। अगर आपको कुछ कमी नज़र आ रही है तो मैं उसके लिए क्षमा मांगता हूं सरकार की तरफ से। लेकिन जितना हम लोग देश हित में हम लोग कर सकते थे, जितना हम लोगों के पास साधन थे, वो हम लोगों ने सब कुछ आप लोगों को दिए हैं। देखिए,
हमारा मान सम्मान चाहिए, मान सम्मान।
वो तो देखिए, मैं कहता हूँ ना कि वो हर व्यक्ति का मान सम्मान को बैठकर हम लोग समझें और फिर उसको हम लोग अमल करें, वो इतना आसान नहीं है। हमें नीतियाँ बनानी है, सबके लिए बनानी पड़ती हैं और जितना हम लोग कर सकते हैं हम लोग अवश्य करेंगे। जैसे आप देश हित की बात कर रही हैं वैसे देश हित से हम लोग भी काम करते हैं और जितना हम लोग सीमित अपने जो साधन हैं उनके द्वारा आप लोगों को हम लोग लाभ दे सकते हैं हम लोग ज़रूर देंगे और हम लोगों ने किया भी है जो 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन का मामला है। लेकिन मैं एक और गंभीर बात पे आई वांट टू कम बैक टू अ सीरियस, वेरी सीरियस मैटर। द सीरियस मैटर इज हाउ डू यू जज परफॉर्मेंस। Now, obviously, if you have a particular parochial or a political or a partisan point of view, you will cherry pick certain points to argue your point. That's how it works. And that's perfectly fine, and I'm absolutely happy to have that debate. But I think the acid test for any democracy, when we have to judge the performance of a government, we have to judge it not from panelists on a debate, we have to judge it from people's perspective. जनता क्या कह रही है, ये हमें देखना है। और जैसे मैंने पहले ही बताया कि हमारे सब जो प्रयत्न थे, जो हमारा प्रयास था, वट एवर वी ट्राई टू डू वॉज टू मेक श्योर कि हर व्यक्ति को और विशेष रूप से जो गरीब हैं उन लोगों के उनके अधिकार दें, चाहे वो घर हो, बिजली हो, सड़क हो, पानी हो, गैस सिलेंडर हो। ये सब चीज़ों के लिए हम लोगों ने बहुत ज़बरदस्त हम लोगों ने प्रयास किए। और देखिए, मैं झारखंड, बिहार जहाँ से मैं आता हूँ उसके बारे में आपको बता सकता हूँ, पूरे देश के बारे में, एक एक गाँव के बारे में नहीं बता सकता हूँ, लेकिन हज़ारीबाग के मैं बारे में बता सकता हूँ, झारखंड के बारे में बता सकता हूँ। और यहाँ जो काम हुआ है, क्रांतिकारी काम हुआ है। हर हम लोगों ने गांव को बिजली से जोड़ा है, हर गांव को हम लोगों ने सड़क दिया और लोगों की ज़िंदगी में क्रांति आई है, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं है, एकदम स्पष्ट है। और जो मैंने कहा कि डेमोक्रेसी इज़ अल्टीमेटली अबाउट हाउ पीपल चूज़, एंड इफ़ यू लुक आफ्टर इलेक्शन आफ्टर इलेक्शन आफ्टर इलेक्शन, डोंट focus on what panelists are saying. They have to say what they have to say given where they are coming from. Look at what the people are saying in a democracy. And the people are voting for the BJP and for the Modi government and for the Honorable Prime Minister again and again and again because we are doing something right, obviously.
Okay, so you're right. Before I come back to the panelists, I want to get in some more views from the audience. Yes.
Hello, my question to respected Jayant sir. Sir, my question is the major agenda of our BJP government is Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. So, sir, in Sukanya Yojana, why rate of interest is decreasing? Most of the national savings schemes rate of interest is decreasing nowadays, but still you have to think about Sukanya Yojana.
Interest rates overall are going down in the economy, and when interest rates go down overall in the economy, you also bring down the interest rate for saving schemes, because really what you're looking for is.
But sir, it's Sukanya Yojana is special.
If I may finish.
Allow him to make his
So
point.
basically what you have to really understand is what is the real interest rate, which is the difference between the interest rate that you are being given versus the inflation rate. When inflation comes down and interest rates come down, you bring down the interest rate we are giving to Sukanya Yojana, so that the real interest rate, which is much higher than you can get for another scheme, remains what it is. So even though the rate has come down because inflation has come down and nominal interest rates are coming down, the real interest rate for Sukanya Yojana is still much higher than you can get elsewhere. So please distinguish between real interest rates and nominal interest rates. What it means is that your money will continue to grow and compound in a real way in the future, even if the rates has come down. So you have to understand how that actually works.
Okay.
Trust me on this.
Okay, now I'd like to pose my question to Mr. Katya Tulsi. Now, many feel that, in fact, many people from Congress and other parties have been saying that the schemes which have been carried out by the Modi government, they're basically old schemes, and now it's like, and they have been repackaged. But will you not give credit to this particular government for innovation, imagination, service delivery, those kind of systemic changes which have been brought about? How would you look at that?
See, I find that the change that is planned, which is to be brought about, is not the measure by which we can assess the government's performance. I think the measure has to be what is the result. What is the result of those policies, whether repackaged or not packaged? What is the result of that those policies? I find that on the poverty front, the poverty has not come down at all. The poverty, 250 million, 25 crore poor have no health care today. They have no education system worth the name. Nothing, primary education is terrible state. Now those are the measures. The question is not about intent, not about policy. Question is of implementation. To what extent has it succeeded? Jan Dhan Yojana, great Yojana. It has now 25.9 crore bank accounts, but the fact of the matter is 1/5 of them are dormant. So it hasn't made a difference. These symbolic things will not matter. People's daily life has to improve, and whether that has improved or not, there was a promise of bringing back black money and putting it in everybody's bank account. Nothing has come, but a lot more, 10 times more has gone out. We are facing the banking crisis. We are facing, something very simple. Kaveri Management Board has not been brought into place. There is acute drought in several areas where people are not getting drinking water.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court for the last 3 months or 4 months has been saying that Kaveri Management Board must be brought about, must be established, not constituted. So what is happening is that when a poor man dies of thirst or hunger, he doesn't make too much of a noise.
Okay.
But the government has to be concerned about the misery of the people, the Dalits, the amount of hostility and violence that they have been suffering. I am not talking about only Una or Koregaon. Even if when the Dalit wants in a village to get married and rides a horse, he will be lynched because of hostility, and then they are being lynched on mere suspicion that they have a particular kind of a meat and therefore killed. The sense of insecurity in Dalits has increased to the extent that they had to organize a Bharat Bandh. And I want to say that there is a tacit approval to these violent incidents, as a result of which it is not the attacker, the killer or the murderer who is being prosecuted. It is the victim's family which is being put in the dock.
But when you say tacit approval, what does it mean, sir?
Tacit approval of those who say कि गाँव की रक्षा करना हमारा धर्म है, वो अच्छा है, मगर वायलेंस को कंडेम नहीं किया जाता है। जब तक वायलेंस को कंडेम नहीं किया जाएगा, उनको सज़ा नहीं दी जाएगी। सज़ा तो दी तब जाए अगर मुकदमा भी हो, मुकदमा करने के लिए उनको बहुत मुशक्क़त करनी पड़ती है, और अगर मुकदमा कायम हो भी जाता है तो चार्जशीट नहीं फाइल होती। चार्जशीट फाइल हो जाती है तो वो भी विक्टिम के फैमिली के खिलाफ होती है।
We are coming back to the same systemic failures which we have been talking about and which have been endemic in the earlier governments also. Pawan, you would like to make a point on this before I go to the audience again?
No, I think that after hearing my good friend Jayant, I think you should wind up the panel discussion. Because he says don't listen to these panelists, listen only to the people of India, and people of India do vote in favor of the current government, which is a democratic choice, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they won't. So I don't think, Jayant ji, you should make that the criteria.
Well, I will, of course, if you give me a chance, I will respond, but please go ahead.
What I think is, his comment, which I know was not intended in this spirit at all, I know him well, but his comment brings us to two other factors which must be taken into account in assessing these 4 years. The first is that the Prime Minister began with the fullest support of the people of India with the one great slogan, सबका साथ सबका विकास। एक शेर है, दिल से तो हर मुआमला करके चले थे साफ हम, दिल से तो हर मुआमला करके चले थे साफ हम, कहने में उनके सामने बात बदल गई। Now what has happened in these last 4 years? The Prime Minister says सबका साथ सबका विकास, and we are seeing a situation where two factors. One is ultra nationalism. Nationalism is a good thing, पर अगर लोग, जैसे मैं पहले भी कह चुका हूँ, एक सिरिंज लेके घूमें और कहे कि अगर आप मेरे से डिसएग्री करते हैं तो थोड़ा सा खून दीजिए, मैं आपकी राष्ट्रवाद की जांच कराना चाहता हूँ, ये गलत है। और जो एक माहौल था जो हमारे देश के लिए ज़रूरी है, जिसकी वजह से प्रधानमंत्री ने सबका साथ सबका विकास का ये एक हमारे लिए लक्ष्य रखा, that goal has been vitiated, I think, with a great deal of social disharmony. There is divisiveness, there is incitement of hatred, there is often violence, and this, I think, is something which the government should do more proactively to control. I think this is important because भाईचारा, सौहार्द, सबको साथ ले करके प्यार मोहब्बत के बगैर ये देश चल नहीं सकता है।
Aditi, but you know, if you listen to the panelists, it seems that the government has just not done anything in the last 4 years, and that would be an unfair thing to, you know, judge the government like that. But my question to you, Aditi, is that when you talk about things like Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, now we have been seeing things from the prism of the Congress government, that you go into the appeasement politics, you go and appease Muslims, you go and appease a certain particular sect or religion. But when Prime Minister Narendra Modi says that Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and the development initiatives or the schemes will not be centered around a particular religion or a particular sect, so what is wrong in that? I mean, if you're not doing a politics of appeasement, you're doing a welfare politics, what is so wrong? I mean, every party looks at the schemes and the development from their own point of view. Is it justifiable then?
My position on this is very clear. I am not for appeasement. I am not for the opposite of appeasement. I am not for either. My issue is that if you do not crack down hard on hatred and making minorities feel small, insulting them, cutting them down to size, efforts to emasculate them, if you don't crack down
but
hard
whenever
on
an
that,
incident like this has happened, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on record has always decried those kind of events.
But his leaders are not listening to him. They keep happening. These incidents keep on and keep on and keep on happening. So why are his leaders not listening to him? He said in parliament, he has said in parliamentary party meetings, he has ticked off leaders, he has but people are not listening to him.
Okay, so
हमारी मानसिकता को क्या हो गया है?
Okay, let me get in a word from Jayant.
अभी पवन जी ने शेर फरमाया तो मुझे भी शेर फरमाना पड़ेगा।
बिल्कुल।
आप लोग जानते ही हैं कि एक बहुत मशहूर एक शेर है जो कहता है, कभी किसी को मुकम्मल जहां नहीं मिला, कभी किसी को मुकम्मल जहां नहीं मिला, किसी को ज़मीन किसी को आसमान नहीं मिला।
नहीं मिलता।
चलिए, आप लोग मुझसे ज़्यादा इन सब बातों में दिग्गज हैं तो आपने ठीक उसको करेक्ट किया। देखिए, ऐसा है कि कोई भी सरकार कुछ भी करती है तो इसमें कमियां तो होती ही हैं। ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि हम कोई परफेक्ट आपको पैराडाइज दे सके, नहीं, क्योंकि हमारे देश एक विशाल देश है। वी हैव अ ह्यूज कंट्री विद अ लॉट ऑफ कम्प्लेक्सिटीज, अ लॉट ऑफ challenges, there are a lot of legacy issues. We can talk about the legacy issues that we inherited from the UPA government. And given all of that, as I said, and I think I thank Aditi ji for saying it, I think we've done a historic, fantastic job. Given what we inherited and what the complexities and challenges that India represents, even though we had a majority government, you also know that there were many, many things we could not get through the Rajya Sabha. For example, the Land Acquisition Act that was also alluded to earlier. So we have to work in a democratic system within a whole host of constraints, within a whole host of legacy issues, and given those constraints, given all that we had to do, I think we've done a historic job. That is very important. And when I said that when you have a panel in which there are people from various different points of view, and if those people are cherry picking those deficiencies which will inevitably exist in a vast democracy such as ours, with all of the challenges that a poor country has, if you cherry pick, of course you can present whatever inflammatory rhetoric you want. It's entirely plausible that you can do that, and you're doing it in a very, very effective way. I think, first of all, we have to go to the people to see on balance what their opinion is, number one. And number two, we also have to take a more balanced view, taking into account the constraints. And I like what Pawan ji said, which is that this was a government with a majority, and therefore the expectations were high, they were high.
Right.
Have we met those expectations fully? No. Mukammal jahan kisi ko nahi mila.
And Jayant, I would like to just interrupt you here. All the political parties who are saying that things have not gone according to the aspirations of the people, all those particular parties, if you go and ask them that what is the blueprint which they have ready for the people, they are unable to say that. On this note, I would like to go to a few more organizations, the farmer organizations. Katya Tulsi ji just mentioned about the agrarian distress, the doubt, Kaveri Management Board not being formed. I would like the farmers here to talk on this issue. What is your view about the last 4 years of the Modi government?
मैं कंवल सिंह चौहान एक किसान हूँ। यह बात सही है कि कोई भी सरकार सभी लोगों को खुश नहीं कर सकती, और ना ही इन 4 सालों में ऐसा इतने काम हो गए कि किसी काम की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं रही है। परंतु किसानों के लिए सरकार ने जो योजना बनाई है, उनसे किसानों को लाभ जरूर मिलने वाला है। भविष्य में कुछ ऐसी योजना बनी है इस सरकार ने जो बनाई है, जैसे कि किसान संपदा योजना है, मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ प्रोसेसिंग की है। इसके अलावा भी मैं कई मीटिंगों में जाता रहता हूँ। किसान, हमारी सरकार चिंतित है किसानों की आय दुगना करने के लिए, और इसके लिए प्रयासरत भी है। परंतु हमारी सरकार ने किसानों के लिए 50% लाभांश की घोषणा करी है, वो अभी किसानों को नहीं मिला है। उसके लिए सरकार को काम करना चाहिए।
सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड की बात करी थी सरकार ने कि करीब कितने 1.5 मिलियन सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड
बहुत बड़ी, मैं किसान हूँ।
हकीकत क्या है सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड?
सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड को मैं बहुत बड़ा मुद्दा इसलिए नहीं मानता कि किसान को, मैं समय किसान हूँ, किसान अपनी ज़मीन देख के समय अंदाज़ा लगा लेता है कि मेरी सॉइल की हेल्थ कैसी है, इसलिए मैं ज़्यादा इस विषय में नहीं बोलूँगा।
ओके, और किसान ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से और भी कोई कुछ कहना चाहेगा?
कुणाल गहलोत, और मैं अध्यक्ष हूँ मैडम भूमिपुत्र किसान क्लब का। मेरे साथ 500 लोग और भी हैं, और पिछले करीब 25 वर्ष से मैं खेती करता रहा हूँ, और भी 7 लोग खेती कर रहे हैं। तो जो हमने अब पिछले 4 साल में पिछली सरकारों में और अब डिफरेंस देखा है, वो ये है कि अधिकारी घर पे आने लगे हैं, पूछने लगे हैं काम का। हमें लगता है कि होएगा, विश्वास एक दिल में कि हाँ होना है,
जो कि पहले नहीं होता था।
पहले कभी इस तरह का हमने अपने बड़ों से ज़रूर सुना था, अपने बड़ों से ज़रूर सुना था कि 70 से पहले इस तरह से अधिकारी आते थे, पूछते थे काम कराने के लिए, सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड बनाना है, आपको लोन देना है, आपको उसके लिए किसी काम के लिए मशीनरी चाहिए वो देंगे, आपको खाद की सब्सिडी देंगे। इस तरह से
आपने एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट बोला है, आप किसी और को भी बोलने का मौका दीजिए बाकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से। जैसे इन्होंने कहा कि पहले सरकार की स्कीम्स बनती थी लेकिन दरवाजे तक कोई नहीं आता था, इंप्लीमेंट हो रही है नहीं हो रही है, ब्यूरोक्रेट्स कभी भी सुध नहीं लेते थे इस बात की। आप हाँ, आप बोलिए अपना पॉइंट, आप क्या कहना चाह रहे हो?
जैसे हमारी सरकार, मोदी जी की सरकार जो काम कर रही है, पहले हरियाणा में और बाकी स्टेटों में हमेशा खाद के लिए लड़ाई होती थी। अब हरियाणा में आज की डेट में खाद के लिए कोई लड़ाई नहीं होती है। अधिकारी खुद आके हमें व्यवस्था बना के देते हैं, नहीं तो वहाँ पे मारकाट की लड़ाई होती थी और वो सबसे अच्छा महत्वपूर्ण कारण था। और आज मोदी सरकार को मैं इसके लिए धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूँ किसान की तरफ से कि आज हरियाणा में इस चीज़ की समस्या नहीं है। धन्यवाद।
लेकिन जो किसानों की प्रॉब्लम है, हाँ आप बोल सकते हैं, किसानों की प्रॉब्लम को लेकर बहुत ज़्यादा पॉलिटिकल हीट जनरेट हो रहा है कि किसानों की प्रॉब्लम सरकार नहीं बहुत अच्छे ढंग से सुलझा पा रही है। क्या आपको भी ऐसे ही लगता है? कहाँ पे चूक हो गई सरकार से जहाँ तक किसानों का मुद्दा है आपके हिसाब से?
अशोक ठाकुर, नेशनल एग्रीकल्चर कोऑपरेटिव मार्केटिंग इंडिया लिमिटेड से
जी।
एक रॉन्ग परसेप्शन बनाया जा रहा है कि एमएसपी नहीं मिल रहा है। मुझे लगता है कि पैनलिस्ट में भी बहुत लोगों को या तो जानकारी नहीं है या गलत बोल रहे हैं। पिछले वर्ष 4725 रुपये अरहर की दाल का एमएसपी बनता था और 5050 बोनस के साथ दिया। इस साल 5050 एमएसपी बनता था जो कांग्रेस के टाइम में फार्मूला था, उसके आधार पर अभी 5450 दे रहे हैं। लगभग 400 रुपये का बोनस है। सभी दालों के ऊपर जो है 400, 350, 300 ये बोनस के साथ एमएसपी के ऊपर दे रहे हैं। ठीक उसी प्रकार अभी सरसों खरीद रहे हैं, 100 रुपये का बोनस है उसके ऊपर, एमएसपी के ऊपर। तो ये जो एक परसेप्शन बना रहे हैं कि किसानों के साथ जो है, मुझे लगता है ये गलत है और ठीक से सरकार की योजनाओं को समझना पड़ेगा। और मैं आपको बताऊं, नेफेड का बजट जो है वो हमारी लिमिट 200 से 300 करोड़ के लिए हमको स्ट्रगल करना पड़ता था। आज 42,000 करोड़ की स्ट्रगल है और 20,000 करोड़ की फार्मर्स की जो पॉलिसीज है वो खरीदी गई हैं। तो ये जो एक परसेप्शन बना रहे हैं, मुझे लगता है कि मैं जितने लोगों से बात करता हूं, ऑपोजिशन या दूसरे लोग भी जो हैं देश के अंदर जो किसानों पर काम करते हैं, किसी के पास किसानों की समस्या का सोल्यूशन नहीं है। कम से कम सरकार ने,
मैंने बोला कि अगर आप ब्लूप्रिंट पूछिए, अगर
नहीं, क्वेश्चन तो सबके पास है, आंसर किसी समस्या का किसी के पास नहीं। लेकिन सरकार ने एक हिम्मत करी है 2022 तक उसको दुगना करने की और उसके लिए काम कर रही है। कम से कम इसका तो एप्रिशिएशन होना चाहिए।
Okay, Pawan, I would like to get in here. Like he's saying that people have not understood the formula which apparently the government has adopted when it comes to tackling agrarian crisis, for example MSPs. So are the political parties not able to read exactly what the government wants, because it's a long-term plan, as Modi government says that they're going to double the farmers' income by 2022?
I was very happy. मुझे बड़ी खुशी हुई आपसे सुन करके कि आप एक संतुष्ट किसान हैं। पर मैं आपसे इतना कह सकता हूं कि बहुत से ऐसे किसान भाई हैं जो आज सार्वजनिक रूप से बात करते हैं कि एक तो ख़ास तौर से जो मुद्दा आपने उठाया एमएसपी का। अब देखिए, दो किसान यहीं बैठे हैं, आप कह रहे हैं कि एमएसपी मिलता है, आपने कहा कि उस पर सरकार को काम और करने की ज़रूरत है, वो अभी तक नहीं मिला है। सवाल ये है कि एमएसपी के मामले में, और जयंत साहब मंत्री हैं सरकार में, वो भी मानेंगे कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक को एफिडेविट दिया था कि हमने वादा ज़रूर किया था, पर कुछ चीज़ें तुरंत संभव है, कुछ नहीं हो सकती और अभी नहीं हो सकती। सरकार ने एफिडेविट सुप्रीम कोर्ट को दिया है, आप कह रहे हैं एमएसपी मिल रहा है। अब जो सरकार का इरादा है दैट दे विल गिव द एमएसपी, वी वेलकम इट, बट इट हैज़ बीन डिलेड। It has been delayed, and there are other factors also. For instance, let me give the example, Jayant ji in particular, I draw your attention. See, I said it in parliament also. Doubling the income of farmers is by itself an ambitious goal, it looks like it. But in reality, what does it mean? Your own national survey shows that the average medium income of a farmer after deducting costs is in the range of 20,000 rupees a year. If you double it in 5 years, it becomes 40,000. In other words, it's about 3,500 a month. If you factor in inflation, you are not doing something substantial for the farmers, although I congratulate the government on the goal. So I think this country needs a mission agriculture, because 60% of our people are linked to farming.
So Pawan, rather than attacking and targeting the government, that the government is not tackling the agrarian crisis, would it not be right to say that you have to give some more time to the government, because any new policy, when you have to unfold it on the ground or implement it, takes time?
Let me answer to you. We can give in enough time, a lot of governments will achieve everything. The debate that you yourself have framed are 4 years of the Modi government. I can't give you 6 years. At least I can't promise it. He may think that it will be 10 years. So I have to debate it within that framework.
Sure, sure. Okay. I'd like to go to some more student organizations who are here. Just raise your hands, the people who have come from the student organizations. Yes, give him the mic, please. Introduce yourself. And from a student's perspective and from the education perspective, do you feel satisfied at the end of 4 years what the current government has done?
As a youth, as a young citizen of the country, there is still the crime rate of our country has increased significantly. The financial crisis that we see on a regular basis has increased significantly. And on a basic level, on a common man's level, things are getting worse day by day. As a student, my concern is that I am in my final year. So after my graduation, I don't have jobs for myself or for myself. Secondly, the education system of our country as a whole is stagnant. We are taught things which have been outdated from the last 10 years. So we are not up to the mark to the industrial standards. So if something can be done for that.
Any other person from the student group wants to make a point? Please.
I Devansh Sharma. I am an IAS aspirant and I want to ask one thing कि जो reality ground है वो जो facts हमें दिखाए जा रहे हैं न्यूज़ चैनल्स पे और या न्यूज़ पेपर्स में उनसे काफ़ी डिफरेंट है. जो एजुकेशन सिस्टम है हमारे यहाँ पे जैसे भी केटी सर ने कहा कि वो काफ़ी टेरिबल स्टेट पे है. तो जो जितने भी टीचर्स हैं यहाँ पे उनके साथ एक बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सप्लॉइटेशन किया जा रहा है. उनको हायर करते हैं 7th पे कमीशन के बेसिस पे, बट उनको सैलरी जो है वो मेयरली जस्ट 15% या लेस देन क्या कहते हैं अराउंड 20-25% ही मिलती है. फॉर एग्जांपल लाइक उनको 40,000 रुपीज़ पे हायर किया, बट उनको जो सैलरी है वो सिर्फ 15,000 या 18,000 मिलती है. अब इसके ऊपर गवर्नमेंट क्या कर सकती है? आई टॉक टू द MLA ऑफ माई एरिया, ही सेड दैट कि यू हैव टू गो फॉर अ स्टिंग ऑपरेशन. व्हेन आई टॉक टू the teachers who are facing this exploitation, they said that we don't have that much guts of taking the steps towards all this. So what government can do for this?
Okay, apart from the concern which you have raised, Jayant, can you just assuage the fears of the students? They say they don't have jobs, the things on the ground, they are not moving. What would you have to tell the student community?
So the two comments we heard brought up 3 different issues. The first issue was jobs for young people. The second was the quality of education itself. And the third was the condition in which teachers are working. The 3 very large issues, I'll try and address them as succinctly as I can. First and foremost, with respect to jobs, now I myself have written extensively on this topic. The reality is, and I speak as an engineer and somebody who is very scientific in their analysis in these matters, that we don't have good quality data in aggregate about jobs being created. We have some data sources that are saying that jobs are being created at high rates, which is the EPFO data. There is other data that's being presented by the CMIE, which is saying the number of jobs have gone down. There have been other data that has been produced showing that jobs in certain sectors have gone up dramatically. In aggregate, what is the exact accurate picture? We cannot determine unless we have a household employment survey, which is expected in September, October. The way I see it is that if we look at the private sector, net in the private sector, in many sectors there is significant job creation that is going on. And so, for example, in aviation, in renewable energy, in financial services, there is significant job creation going on. So people need to focus on those sectors where jobs are happening. Those other sectors that have slowed down, you will find less jobs. So that has to be something you factor in. Secondly, as far as infrastructure is concerned, there's been massive build out in infrastructure. The rate of infrastructure creation has been doubled. Construction jobs have gone up, capital equipment jobs have gone up. There is no disputing that. And RERA, of course, is a good move for real estate. Absolutely. And then finally, if you look at Mudra, which is for self-employment, there have been 11 crore loans that have been given out. People think about 7 to 8 crore people have got Mudra loans, which has, of course, provided a boost for self-employment as well. So again, as I'm saying, we have to look at it from multiple different sources. All in all, one would conclude that there has been significant job growth. That is my scientific conclusion. In fact, but like I said, I don't have 100% guarantee of this because we don't have the data yet.
But as you pointed out about the construction sector, I believe during the Congress's rule, the kilometers of highway which were constructed were just about 11.5 kilometers, and the present government constructs about 22.5, just to give you a little data. But apart from this, there were a lot of other flagship schemes of the present government, like Swachh Bharat scheme, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. These are all social welfare schemes. I'll come to you, sir.
No, we didn't finish education. So one was jobs. Second was the quality of education. Quality of education, whether it's the institutions of eminence, whether it's the focus on learning outcomes, the kind of reporting that we have now of the quality of education. Everywhere you can see standards are being improved, and there is a national education policy that's just coming out where we're trying to improve education. I'll just give you one data point. This does not mean in aggregate that this is what's happening in India. You know what has happened in Uttar Pradesh when there's been a real clampdown on cheating. There's been a tremendous clampdown on cheating. Of the 75 lakh people who were supposed to show up for exams, 10 lakh did not because they were fraudulent exam takers. So everywhere you can see quality is being improved, content is being improved, and of course this takes time because we've got crores of people in education right now, but we are progressively improving education. Finally, you talked about teachers, and I will just say that teachers in a government school have pay that is set by the government and of course goes up every year accordingly. But in private schools, teachers are paid as per market, and that is something that cannot be regulated necessarily by government. That is a decision between a teacher and a school as to what they're willing to accept as payment.
Right. And as I was just talking to you about the social welfare schemes, I'll come to the foreign policy bit now, and I'll go to the Aditi also. That the social welfare schemes like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, what is the kind of difference which these schemes have brought in on the ground? I'd like to, yes, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Lalit
Hold
Kumar
the mic closer, please.
From Sulabh International.
Yes.
We are here with our colleagues.
So you are the Swachhagrahis, right?
Yeah, we appreciate Swachhagrahis, but
Okay.
our organization is working for the last 50 years.
Yes.
So Pawan Verma ji ने कहा सबका साथ सबका विकास, उसी तरह का एक पावरफुल स्लोगन था, सोच बदलो देश बदलेगा. सोच बदल रही है, देश बदल रहा है, क्योंकि जो स्वच्छ भारत मिशन रूरल और अर्बन बड़ी तेज़ी से चल रहा है. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर टॉयलेट्स ही नहीं, लोगों का बिहेवियर चेंज हो रहा है. तो इसको एक जो जन आंदोलन बनाया है, उसके लिए हम इस सरकार को 4 साल में जो काम किया है उसके लिए बधाई देना चाहते हैं.
Okay, I'd like to get in Aditi here. Talking about these kind of social welfare schemes which have been rolled out in the form of a mission mode. As he was pointing out, that there is a certain behavioral change which is palpable, which is visible. So what do you have to say to this, and how would you look at the success of the present government in that context as well?
Well, I'm afraid I have travelled quite a lot, and I don't see any significant behavioral change, frankly.
Okay.
There is a sense that that you know, keeping places clean is not my job; it's the government's job. And until people are fully sold into this idea that this is a common area which is the responsibility of all of us, I fear that this will not.
No, but does it happen without people's participation? You walk on the road and you throw banana peels or you throw any garbage on the road?
You know, I see this happening everywhere. Everywhere, small towns, big towns, cities. In our country, I don't know why, but the sheer inspiration of a leader does not seem to be enough to drive people to achieve this. And I think it's I come back to what I said earlier, which is mansikta.
Okay.
So I think we have to change the thinking, and I fear that that change has not come about, not in social relations, not in the way people look at women and their empowerment and their progress, because there is now an imbalance between what women are being able to achieve and what men are being able to achieve, and there is a sense that women have to be kept in control. This applies to across race, across religion. This applies to the issue of triple talaq also.
In fact, BJP is the only government who said that triple talaq is unconstitutional.
The fact
so
is the Supreme Court has said that the practice of triple talaq is unconstitutional. But there is no database on how many women have been given triple talaq. So you randomly bring about something for which laws already exist and say that as a community, this community is in favor of abandoning its women. No community will like that charge.
Lot of laws existed and old laws have been repealed also by the present government. So a lot of deadwood has been cleaned. We can't say that, Pawan. And what is your view about what just Aditi has mentioned?
No, because societal change takes time to come. I would have been happier that along with a very laudable goal of a cleaner India, Swachh Bharat, if beyond toilets, some infrastructural work had been done on the basic issue of garbage disposal and sewage disposal. Because if you go and Mr. Sinha mentioned, Jayant ji mentioned about Bihar, Jharkhand, one of the biggest problems of second tier cities including big metropolitan cities, is garbage disposal. Garbage and filth are visible even as before a signboard saying Swachh Bharat. So we need an institutional, infrastructural mechanism with which to hand it, along with behavioral change which will reinforce it. That I think takes time to happen and has not happened as yet. But I wanted to raise one final issue that concerns me. You see, Prime Minister Narendra Modi came with the promise of a muscular approach with those we consider to be, if not enemies, opponents of the Indian nation. And in particular, I am talking about Pakistan. But today, Neelu ji, you have to see that the situation in Jammu Kashmir, the number of infiltrations across the line of control, the number of jihadi infiltrations, the number of our brave soldiers who have lost their lives, the number of civilian deaths, the frequency of these infiltrations, they have increased manifold. And I would request the government to kindly make its foreign policy embedded in a strategic matrix. यह चाणक्य का देश है, यहाँ रणनीति बनती है, adhocism नहीं होता है. I would request, I say this to all governments, it is required and the manner in which the state government itself, and pardon me for bringing in local politics, but the PDP, BJP government in a sensitive state like Jammu Kashmir, pulling in opposite directions permanently is not the best thing for a sensitive state like Jammu Kashmir. I think the Prime Minister should have intervened long ago.
Okay. Jayant, you want to say something on this before we wind up taking the final comments from the audience as well?
Well, I want to talk about sanitation for a second, and I want to say that we took on mission mode the idea of being able to build a toilet for every household in India. And we have largely accomplished that. Of course, again, nothing is perfect, and of course there are deficiencies and there are areas we still need to get to. In my own constituency, that is the case. But by and large, in mission mode, we have been able to declare many districts ODF, and we are rapidly building toilets for every household. This is a remarkable achievement. Government has limited resources. Government cannot do everything under the sun overnight. So within the 4 years, for us to be able to accomplish what we have done, as Aditi ji said, has been fantastic. Whether it's bank accounts, whether it is roads, whether it is toilets, and so on. So we have accomplished that. Now, Pawan ji is exactly right that while we have addressed the issue of toilets, we have not done as much on solid waste management, particularly in our cities. They are as filthy as they have been. And Aditi ji is also right that we have not been able to clean up our surroundings. We have a lot of work to do. Of course, I expect very much that when we get another mandate, another historic and sweeping mandate in 2009, we will come to solid waste management and get that done as well.
2019, Pawan is correcting you.
2019, sorry, apologies.
Okay. So what I can say is that there are a lot of unfinished agendas which the government has to work on, but there have been at the same time a number of achievable targets which the Modi government has achieved. But yes, if you look at it in terms of report card, yes, it's like a glass half full. So I thank you so much, Mr. Jayant Sinha, for being on the program. It was a pleasure having you on the program. Mr. Pawan and Aditi, it was a pleasure talking to all of you, and a very big thank you to this informed set of people who joined us on the program.